I was interrupted in a very important moment backstage. So what are those shoes?
These are my second day wearing them. They're Lems, and I like them a lot.
They look very comfortable.
Yeah, they're good.
So these are the important conversations.
They're replacing my Hokas, which I'm addicted to.
Yeah.
Right, those are the only ones.
There's another big thing. So we're going to segue from footwear to the pants, exactly. No, actually, we're going to take another important dive into real estate, truly. I'm so happy to have you here in this theater, both of you, actually. So, Aim, were you here in this theater? I don't think you were.
So.
No,
yeah.
She thought she was.
Yeah.
Because how long have you been a resident in Santa Barbara?
About 30 years. We got shook out with that Northridge earthquake.
Like, we gotta get the fuck out of here.
Oh, well, yeah, move to a safe place. Like Santa Barbara doesn't have fires and earthquake. Really kind of crazy. But it's so beautiful. Santa Barbara, I mean, come on.
Santa Barbara. And not to have to tick through, but you did. You had the small trail of tears. You had a home that burned. Did you also have another?
An earthquake?
An earthquake.
A flood?
Yeah.
We're waiting for the locusts. The first movie I did here was Cutter's Way.
Oh, sure.
Which was, I fell in love with the play.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. John Hurt, he was so great in that.
And you shot here?
We shot it right here.
Oh, it's fantastic. Okay, good. Anyway, that was my Santa Barbara plug for everyone.
Okay.
So the important question I have for everyone at the outset, Jeff and I are not married. I am married to Amy. So,
Is that for Brad or for the institution of marriage?
that was applause.
Marriage.
Yeah. We're coming up on 30 years. It's
We
pretty
are.
good. It's
We're coming up on 50.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, 47, 40.
That's the thing about working with Jeff. It's like he's older. It's more marriage, more movies. It's always going to be more.
Can't compete. I love that. But I only mention that because if there's at times a lack of respect on either side of the conversation, you'll
Marriage, yay! Means you can be shitty to each other.
So at the outset, because Jeff and I were just talking about trying to avoid spoilers. First of all, who, and don't be shy if not, but who has seen any of The Old Man? Nice.
Okay.
So now I'm going to head into who has seen any of season 2 of The Old Man? Awesome. And those of you who have you made it through the season, or that's still pretty
The
great?
double hand up there. I see you.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, good. I will still not give away too much. I asked Amy, we were talking about which episode to screen, and I think we both kind of landed on this is episode 6 of 8 in season 2. Season 2. So again, I'll steer clear of most spoilers if I can, but we'll talk about and for those of you who haven't seen the series, great, and this will hopefully invite you to do so. It is remarkable, and I get to say that because I'm just a tourist when it comes to this particular program. But it's one of those incredibly rare cases of performers meeting material, meeting an original point of view. So with that, we'll dive in. The two operative words, old and man. And how I really believe the show both embraces and wildly subverts the expectations of those words. That's been my belief since the time. But what's interesting here, I'm going to read a little because I do write, so unfortunately I'm not a performer. So for those few of you who haven't actually seen the show, just know this: there are no capes, there's no superpowers, there's no leading men gallivanting with women half their age. 7/8 maybe, but it's a show which is why I wanted to have this discussion. It's a show that leans into the realities of aging. It's storytelling informed by actual consequence and what changes are possible or not for characters heading into their second chapters. It also challenges the very foundations, I believe, of male-centric storytelling, and at times truly upends them. So if, for those of you remember, if Edie from the movie Heat were to grow up, she might look a lot less docile and a lot like the character of Zoe in The Old Man. So right off the bat, Aim, what were your concerns before you read the pilot script, and then what convinced you to do it, besides
Before I read the pilot script?
And heading into reading it? Any of those moments?
I just don't want to play the girlfriend anymore. It just seems like I did that. And what Brad said is true, that as much as I loved the pilot, I was like, what do I do?
Because she's not in the pilot. So that
Right, well, I'm literally not in the pilot. And what one of our, for those of you that know the movie Heat, I play this, I'm the girlfriend of the bad guy, and when he says I'm the bad guy, I fold into his arms inexplicably with no language at all. And Michael Mann and I still talk about that moment. I'm like, I just don't, However, I understand the romance of that movie and the beauty of that movie. But I always thought, like, what Edie didn't get to speak. So it was wonderful when I first met John and Dan, the showrunners, and I said, I love, oh my gosh, like working with Jeff and John Lithgow, what a dream. But these are my concerns, that I want to make sure that Zoe has a fully formed point of view and is not just in support of. And it kind of reminds me of like this movie Heat I did, and it's like, oh no, we talk about this all the time, that we call Zoe Edie Evolved. So there's in the third episode of the first season, there's a very parallel moment where I talked to Ali on the phone, and he's, turns out that my dreamboat date has a very intense, violent past, and I get to hear, okay, this guy is really complicated, and instead of saying, okay, I say, get out of my house. And it's really cathartic, and then I get pulled in more. But I think that, so in answer to your question, Brad, I just wanted to make sure she had agency and she was fully formed on her own, just like any character.
I like that. Pulled it up. I threw you in the trunk of a
Yeah, I was going to
car.
say.
And then you did.
Pulled you in, yeah.
But I save you with the dogs.
You do. You
Yeah,
saved me
baby.
several
I
times.
save you.
You saved me several times.
Well, also too, I live in awe of actors. So here's one thing I'll mention about going back to that Michael Mann moment. Amy has an ability, and I've witnessed Mr. Bridges do this on set too, to just be an incredible collaborator with the director and to try to help serve their storytelling instincts. And I remember, anybody who's seen Heat, there's that incredible extended end sequence where De Niro has to go exact revenge because he can't help himself and leaves her in a car at a hotel in a parking lot. And all of a sudden, one by one, fire engines are coming in and police cars are coming in, and she's just sitting and waiting. And Amy relayed to me that she spoke to Michael about this and said, I just have to say, in my own bones, as a woman, I don't think I would do that. And essentially, she said, but if you're asking me to play an aspect, like an archetype, an aspect of love, I can do that for you. He said, yeah, that. And so she was like, okay. And it's one of the most incredible silent performances I've ever seen you do. And it's because it's like serving his needs and the story's needs, I should say. And I never got to meet Jeff until they were shooting the pilot. And we'll talk more about this in a little bit, but I was so jealous. John Watts, who's a wonderful director who was doing the pilot, Jeff would finish a take and then he would say, what else can I do for you? And how else can I help you shape this moment? Is there anything? Just, again, that skill set and that trust to only add to, not to challenge, but to just add to what the moment is gigantic.
Yep.
For you,
Can I talk about that a little bit?
please.
Yeah, what was I going to say? Yeah, us actors, we do our painting, and then we give it to the director, and he gives it to the editor, and then they make a collage out of our work. They cut it all up, And so thinking about the end product, I want to supply a director with as many takes, or many versions of a particular scene, because you never know what's going to come in handy in the editing room. I think of it as, if you're a photographer, kind of bracketing your image, your exposure, what you think is the ball, right in the, what you think is right, and then give it, because you never know, So that, and another thing that was interesting, I think you have had more experience with this, but I was a little bit concerned with all the different directors. I'm used to a movie, you've got one director, but with the TV show, but every show is a different guy, or they do two. I can't remember exactly what.
Or Chet, remember Chet? We love Chet.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, I have done more television than you. I've done something
Yes,
more. But I look to John and Dan. I mean, so on television,
they
the
got the
steady is the
showrunner,
showrunner.
right.
So, and obviously respecting the director. But if I have a real question about the story, that's my boss.
Yeah, and it all finally gets down to casting, not only the actors, but the DP, the directors, and the showrunner, and then it even goes up to Littlefield, Warren, and then John Landgraf. All those guys, they were so supportive and, create the kind of environment and cast the kind of people that you want to work with. So even though it's a different director I'd never worked with, I know it's coming from that guy, cast that. And it's fascinating to all the different approaches.
Yeah, and that's a real thing. Like, I always think of in a movie or a play, I do a lot of theater, the director is my boss, but the showrunner in TV is my boss. Obviously respectful of everybody, but it's like they're the continuity, and they're going to be there.
Amy and I met on an episode of television.
We did.
And what's interesting
You
is...
were my boss, baby.
There's going to be tape of this. I can tell you, because the first 3 years of my career were directing episodic television. And so the interesting flip side is you are the substitute teacher. And the kids can say, no, I sit at that desk. I sit at that.
That must be annoying.
It's a really interesting challenge, because you're coming in, and here's what you know. The dolly grip knows the set better than you do, probably knows the characters better than you do, and the script supervisor. So you have to both harness this incredible knowledge base, but also hopefully be bringing something to the party. And when Amy and I met on NYPD Blue the first season, we had not exchanged 2 words, and she walked up to me at one point prior to doing a scene and said, "Okay, Mr. Director," her words, "Okay, Mr. Director."
It was a move. It was a kind of a move.
She's like, so we're going into a kind of a police procedural scene. "Okay, Mr. Director, so why am I X and Y and Z?" And it was all police procedural gag. And I proceeded to immediately give her an answer, at the conclusion of which I said, "How's that sound? I have no idea. But I'll find out for you." Because I had a great mentor, Marty Ritt, who was a remarkable director. And Marty always said to me, here's the thing, everyone will say, "Just have an answer." He said, "That's not going to serve you. What you can do is basically say, I don't have the answer, but ask me tomorrow at 3 p.m. Not while you're shooting, but like with the Teamster captains when you go on a tech scout, where should we park the trucks? And Marty always said, just be honest, but still have a sense of authority and command. And all they want to know is they're going to have an answer, and they're going to be comfortable, and they're going to be safe. So yeah, so being on the directing side. But today, too, in the last number of years, the opportunities for newer directors are in television, in the television space, especially in streaming, they're pretty big. And so your point about giving these extra touches, which might come in handy in the cutting room, a lot of those directors don't know they're going to need them. And that's what's such a great gift.
Yeah.
Because it's,
You know, for some reason, when you were talking there, Orson Welles came to mind. First time out the gate, Citizen Kane. You know, we hadn't gotten much better than that, you know. And the DP's, you know, who's the DP?
Greg Toland.
Greg Toland
Amazing Greg
was the
Toland.
old, and he wasn't that old. I think
Right.
he was like 40 or something. But he was this, you know, kind of master there. And I remember Peter Bogdanovich told me this story. He was a dear friend of Orson Welles. He said Orson couldn't get stage direction, you know, the whole thing.
yeah.
And a lot of things he didn't know. And it was in the days when everybody wore ties coming to work.
Yeah.
And Orson was, you know, telling the gaffer, the, you know, light guy says, no, the light, I want a spire coming here, you know, and this kind of backlit here. And the guy says, excuse me, Mr. Wells, that's really Mr. Toland's position. And then Greg Toland heard that and then just read the whole thing. Say, no, listen to this guy. This is why I'm here, you know. I've had such great luck with first-time guys because they don't know.
They're going
because
off
you don't
of their
know.
actual
They're just,
instincts, yeah.
And if you are surrounded by
Yeah.
guys like Greg Toland, you know, great cameramen, wow, you get some good stuff.
Yeah. Vilmos Zsigmond said of Steven Spielberg, he did the Sugarland Express, his first movie, and then he did not do Jaws. He did the third one, and they didn't have a good time. He said, yeah, he suddenly knew too much. And it was his openness at the beginning that made for this incredible collaboration, but it's instincts. That's right.
Oh, wonderful.
So for you, I have to imagine, Jeff, that even in this golden age of streaming, other series might have come your way. What was it about this that made you decide, I'm gonna do that?
I have an interesting approach, at least it is to me. I really resist just about everything. Everything that comes at me in life, you know. Movies, for example, because I know if I say yes to this, there's going to be all these things I won't be available for, other movies and, you know, things I'm not even aware of. And I'll be away from my family and my beautiful wife. It's just, so I try to resist. And I resist meeting with the creators because I know, you know, what Marty Landau had a great line in Tucker that I can relate to. He says, you know, I'm catching your dreams. Dreams are contagious, you know. And so when I get around those creators and start to jam, oh God, I get sucked in. So I resisted. And then Sue and I had lunch with John and you know, all the guys, you know, Littlefield. And they were talking, I got sucked in because I saw, oh, these guys, they're going to cast it properly.
Right.
They're going to shoot it in LA, you know, all these things. And I said, okay, I'm in. And then I read an old friend, Santa Barbara, Tim Stack. Do you know Tim Stack?
I know Tim Stack.
I told my wife, I was reading the script, I said, this is pretty good, Suze. And she said, yeah, Tim gave you that book about 2 years ago and saying this would be a good part for you. Completely forgot about it. Then I was just, you know, intrigued by the book was a page turner and the script was, you know, the same.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, and again, too.
Oh, and just one other thing, too. These guys, these CIA guys, they're the best actors in the world because they're acting for their lives. And we had a CIA expert on the show. I'm spacing out his name. No, what was his name? Christopher.
Yeah, Christopher
Huddleston. Oh, I got it. Oh. Yeah, and he.
That is not his name.
Yes, it is.
I feel like that's my dentist.
Christopher Huddleston.
Christopher, definitely.
He was that day. He's CIA. So, yeah.
But he was just wonderful. Whenever you have a real guy on the set, oh man, that makes all the difference. And I'm laughing at one thing he taught me. You remember what I'm going to say?
Uda.
The whole thing with these spies is they play this game called OODA with each other. And OODA is an acronym for observe, orientate, decide, and act. So that's what you're doing all the time. You're thinking, you know, where am I? What did it say? Orientate.
Yeah, where are the exits?
What was the other? Observe.
Decide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You observe the scene. You orientate where you are, what you're going to do. If he does that, I'm going to do this, and you're playing it with this other spy. And the faster you can do that, you win the game, kind of. You know, so that was a fascinating thing.
So we'd be like sitting around, we'd be like having lunch, and Jeff's like so present, as you could tell, as a person. And then he'd start, I'm like, are you OODA-ing? Like, I can totally see you doing it. I don't think I'm supposed to be seeing you. He's just like, I was like, I know what you're doing. But I feel like that's a very Zoe Chase moment. Like, I see you.
So this is part of the process that usually also doesn't get spoken of. So Amy and Jeff share an agent who's been probably in both of your lives for a long time. That summer would have been the summer of 18 or 19 because of COVID and everything. This has been a long, long period for 2 seasons. But the summer of 18, Amy gets a call. We're back east. You're going to get an offer for this new thing. And I think he was able to share it with Jeff. And going to get an offer. Okay, fantastic. That's great. She hadn't read anything. She didn't know anything about it. And then you're going to, get a chance to read for this new thing. And Amy's like, okay, wait a second. What happened to that call last week? But what's beautiful is, and the esteemed actors here on stage, the show is all about chemistry. And what was genius was, without sharing names, you were one of, there were 2 other actors, I feel like, right?
But really
both
good
incredible actors. I remember trying not to react because I was like, oh, damn, she's
I was the same way. I was like, dang, they're really good.
But distinctly different. Distinctly different. And so what was that? Did you guys do a scene together?
Yeah.
Is that what you did?
You were off book. I remember that really well.
Were you on book?
Well, I
think you
was
were off.
almost off. No, but this is fun because I don't read all the time with people, but in the past when I've, somebody amazing was already in place, this sounds really weird, but you don't want to be totally off book in case they're not. You know what I mean? And usually people are not as prepared as Jeff, to be perfectly honest. But I remember coming in and you put your pages down because you didn't need them, and I was like, oh, let's go. It's like, oh, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, and that's always what it feels like. That it's really. I'm sure you see this a lot too. People that are on the day that you're shooting a scene, it's like, wait, let me look at the. It's like not only do you not know those words. That is the first time you're reading the scene. Like you are not prepared,
Yeah.
And your level of preparation means that we just get to go.
Yeah.
And that was my main. Also, I think you had a sarong on.
Did I? No, I didn't. Because that's my uniform. But I don't
Where's
know if
Sue?
I did
Where's
have
Sue?
that.
I feel like he was wearing a sarong. He was wearing a dress. I looked super cute and had lipstick on, and he always looked super cute, and he was wearing sandals and a sarong.
You know what? You know what's wild about what we all are up to? This is something I love about what we do. And I wish the world would work this way. You've got all these different people from all different walks of life, different political, philosophic views. And then you get together to make something beautiful, something that you can be proud of and say, wow, that's great. And on an especially good day, all your high expectations get transcended and you go, oh, wow, that, And then with actors, it seems like there's kind of 2 general schools. And I've worked with both kinds, then you can both get good results from either way. But there's one school who will say, please just call me by my character's name, and I'd rather we don't have any contact except on the film. And then there are other people that you feel they're open and say, it's almost an unspoken thing, but we have very little time to get down, right, to get to it. So let's be friends, let's loosen up, you know, right?
Yeah.
And how, when that openness happens, how quickly you can connect with people and create that ease, because when you're relaxed, you know, the good stuff is allowed to come through you.
Yeah. Well, and the humility of, like, we don't really know what it is, you know, we're prepared for it, but we don't know.
It's that thing as an artist where, you know, sometimes you got to work at it, but when it's doing you, when you're in the zone, that is so cool.
Well, the other thing that we did, because I remember you saying, coming from movies back in the day, it's like you'd watch dailies together, you know, and you'd like have a drink and watch dailies together, and it's like, oh, did we get it, or this was good, or this was. So, and that can be like and listen, some actors don't like to watch themselves. I've sort of gotten used to it and produced stuff that I've appeared in, so I kind of have that muscle. But we would look at playback a lot in a very unneurotic way. It's like, did we get it? Or what else could we do? Or wasn't like, wasn't fraud. It was like, well, this is part of the tool that we have.
Yeah, and some directors are afraid of having everybody look, and I can understand. They're also afraid of rehearsal sometimes.
They're afraid of us. Why are you afraid of us? We're adorable.
I'm not, but exactly, rehearsal, and I do know directors, I know some very well-known directors who really don't wish to have it, and I don't think it's because they want to keep it fresh. I think they're worried about being challenged and not having a language for certain aspects of the material, and so but boy, talking about having to get down quickly, that's the beauty of, Amy in the last year has done 3 plays, and I've got to go sneak in during rehearsals, and I'm always so envious, just that time.
Yeah, and you don't want to, I don't like rehearsing just before you do it. It's nice if you can rehearse.
Yeah.
You know, like working with Sidney Lumet, we would rehearse that whole movie. We would go through the whole movie from beginning to end 2 times a day, which was wonderful, because then you really start to live the story. You get, you know the story, and Sidney's general direction was, I don't want any indication. I want you to give performance level each time, because that's when you start to peel the onion and really get down to it. And then on the day, I think you got a bump for bringing this all in, for bringing the whole show in early, you know, because it'd be 1 or 2 takes, and all right, Bubby, let's go, and he'd pick up the batteries and move to the next thing. You know?
Sidney Lumet would, in this rehearsal process,
tape it on the floor,
out, camera angles, and so he would fly. So if you weren't prepared on the day for some reason, I'm sure that would.
But you would be, because you did it. You did 2 weeks rehearsal, going through the whole movie 2 times, and each scene you just do once.
Yeah, and even famously, you know, sometimes depending on the style of a film, there's an incredibly distant, wide shot of a couple of actors, and a less experienced director might run that first thing in the day and run it to death, and it's. You know, Ethel Merman in a hoop skirt. I mean, it's like, what are you doing? And he famously he'd have a sense editorially of where he was going to use that piece, shoot that piece, off you go, which is brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, that also brings up, it's funny, I jumped ahead in my little order of conversation, but again, talking about age and experience. I was watching this great Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward documentary. It's a limited series that Ethan Hawke
Oh, that was great.
Isn't that great?
I saw it.
And at one point in her career, she was essentially mentoring and actually teaching. She was teaching some younger actors, and Laura Linney was a student of hers, and one of her male students watched her on stage, I guess, one night, and just was floored by how dropped in she was and how relaxed and this and that. And he said to her the next day, how do you do that? How do you, and she had a great response. She said, because I know I can.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just beautiful.
That is a beautiful one.
And that to me is...
Oh, that's very good.
It's that thing where you know in your bones you can find each other and play. And just, I see that all the time with you. And that's just the difference between a wonderful actor.
Well, it's also like, it's the whole thing. It's like, oh, acting is over there, real life is over here, the character's over there, I'm over here. And I think that, working with you, and I definitely did get this from, I had come from theater where and not only did you have a much longer time to rehearse, but you had it's like, this is rehearsal, which is private, and then now we're going to perform the thing, right? And so then doing film and television, I was like, what you call we're just blocking. We haven't actually rehearsed this, And am I interesting enough? And I had to think like, okay, the camera is going to capture me exploring the material. This is not what I would consider a performance, but I'm okay. And then watching De Niro, I was like, oh, you trust that you are interesting to be looked
and
at,
that
really.
they're pieces of film that he knows.
And he
they're
knows
pieces
editorial,
of
just
film.
like you do. It's like, oh, this art form, and so if I'm not interesting enough for the scene, you'll cut it out, or there's. But all of that, like, I got to be the best little girl in the world and have something worthwhile. Tyne Daly, who played my mom on Judging Amy, big theater, and she didn't like it she always, and she said, like, I just feel like I'm not ready to perform it. It's like you have to blow that up if you're going to work at the pace and in this particular art form, because you're going to watch me play with it and watch me look at Jeff. Like, that's what the scene is, I guess.
I got to work with Kathy Bates this year, and she was so sweet because she's now doing a network television show at that pace and schedule. And she was like, oh, but it's not soup yet. That was her phrase.
Yeah.
Oh, just when it's becoming soup, we have to leave.
Did you work with Bo in that yet?
I
Bo's
didn't.
in there,
He's in that. I know. He came in. No, I didn't get to, but was very happy to see that he's there. Okay, I'm going to read a little more to move along to this next. So, again, thankfully, so many of you have seen the show. What's so unique about the show, to me, with the three protagonists of a certain age, is that the real action of the show seems to be the stretches of behavior and interaction between the more overt moments of action. That's where the show seems to live, and the writing is unique as well. I was just saying to Jeff backstage, it strikes me watching episode 6 again in particular, that it's like you as performers are like writing this river of language. And I'd really love to discuss that for you guys as performers. In another writer's hands, the scenes would probably be about a third as long and very expository. And it's a very heightened and really interesting, but how they own it, I'm fascinated by.
Yeah, I mean,
He's not
we'll often, I not often, but I've said to John, God, this is overwritten, man. I mean, And he says, yeah, I know, but that's the style. I said, oh yeah, you're right. Each movie or each show has a tone, and it's wonderful where all the actors are in the same world. They're all, they're jamming, and it bugs me when you're taking a movie, it's going, and then there's one guy who's not in the world.
Different movie.
It blows the whole thing.
Yeah.
So in this, there is a style and a tone that John's created that's, challenging sometimes, but you rise to it as best you can. What are you thinking?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's sort of like if you see, Richard III, it's like, oh, people in this world speak, in iambic pentameter. I mean, it's that specific, really. Steinberg's. I mean, my challenge at the beginning, season 1, but continuing is Zoe is literally the one person who is not part of this world, right? She's like and so my big thing, especially with like this guy, is like, don't get sucked into your rhythm, because I'm out here,
right,
like I'm like a divorced lady. I'm not in a super spy. You're in a super spy thing. I'm just like trying to get my Airbnb going. So I think that and then slowly for Zoe herself to start speaking and thinking this way. But that was really, and I was really happy with season 1, especially when I get introduced, because you've been in this like super dense, like, oh my gosh, intense. And then I'm like, hi, and I was like, but unless Chase has that, then it's like, but then the way Zoe thinks is very much of this world. She just expresses it differently. It's heightened language. I mean, you gotta, You know, I'm extremely writer-friendly right now. I feel like I did 12 years of network television, and 6 years of them was a character that was basically myself, right? And so I never was disrespectful to writers, but even on Private Practice with Shonda Rhimes, she's like, you can put it in your own words. You can put it in your own words. And so you get sort of used to that. And then I did this show called The Leftovers, and I would say, like, to Damon Lindelof, like,
I have no words.
You know, Laurie says whatever you write. I cannot, this world is so... and then doing more theater, actually, and new plays in specific. I did a new play in 2013. I played this academic who speaks a lot. And with a new play, you know, there's a moment where the writer's like, okay, here are the line notes. I got like 4 pages of line notes. I was like, I've memorized it, but I had paraphrased the shit out of it.
Oh, interesting.
You know, I was like, I thought I knew the show. It's like, oh my, and with a new play, you have to get, and so then I started to really surrender to the writers.
Yeah,
But
it helps.
It does
really
help.
helps
And then
a
you
lot.
just ride that carpet rather than like, how would I say it? It's like, who gives a shit how Amy Brennan would say it? That's not what the audience is watching.
That's what I say all the time.
Yeah, well, it's like music.
Right. Learn it.
In Lebowski, every man. You look in the script. What was it? Let me see. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's got a
Right.
thing.
Right.
You don't want to mess with that.
Right. And in our show, it is such heightened language that, and I think when the scenes I love are when it's like the humanity shines. Like the characters are so smart. It's like we are speaking this way, and we are aware we are speaking this way, you know, and we are both speaking this way, so I'm going to bust you about how you know what I mean? It's not sort of unaware, which I think is really cool.
But and again, this is not a spoiler, but again, I'm happy a lot of you have seen this episode, and for those who haven't, it's going to be a pleasure to watch it again. The most emotional moment for me in this episode comes out of some of that language, but it's also very visceral, and to me, I think there's a scene in this show, this episode, that really sets up the rest of the season in terms of this relationship. And it is that sense of Jeff's character, Dan, telling a story about his wife, now deceased, in a moment where he worries that essentially she says, you know, the people who break things have to be outside with the animals. And Amy's character saying, I don't want to be outside with the animals. And the two of them in this moment, knowing they are of a piece. And it's just, I said, it's as close to a wedding as you get in this show. And without giving things away, the word wife comes up in a future episode. And it's interesting because that, to me, was the moment. It's really striking, but it comes again out of
I did not understand that line of dialogue. I was like, I don't get, like, this happens to me with Steinberg all the time. I was like, But I think it's like that thing of like when we torture that poor young woman, right? And I say that was really easy to do. I wish it hadn't been so easy. And it's basically me recognizing the sociopathy in me.
Yes.
And you going like, I get it. And we're kind of outside of normal society. And will you be with me as we are outside of normal life, you know? But it took me a long, I was like, I don't really get what I'm saying.
Just as we're talking about the writing and the characters, something that popped into my head that is kind of fascinating to me is that he's been out of, you know, spying and that kind of thing for about 30 years or something. He's been off the grid.
Has he been living in Santa Barbara like you? For 30
No,
years? It's just weird that it's the same amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And he's got this, you know, daughter who he loves, a very weird relationship, but he's trying to be as normal as possible. And but he was a spy. And the spy is all about manipulating and playing this OODA game and figuring out, oh, if she thinks that, I'm going to do this, and that's going to win her over. And so he's developed a habit of that so much that he doesn't even really know if he is genuine or he's manipulating you, you know. And that's how does your character feel? I mean, you finally realize that, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I think that's my favorite thing when there's an event scene And in a television show, this is why I love television, actually. I mean, movies it can happen too, but in television you can have like when you make me the scrambled eggs, right?
Right,
And
right,
then
right.
and then like a season later, I'm like, holy
He worked me.
you worked
Yeah.
me. When you made the scrambled
That's
eggs, I
right.
see, you know what I mean? And so we kind of reflect on it.
Yeah.
So I think that whenever Zoe does that, it's like I get your brain.
And at the same time, my guy, Chase, he longs to be genuine, authentic, and to find a person. Is this a person? Can I do that? It's so frightening.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what's drawing him to you, and it's so kind of crazy. He doesn't want to have anybody have any power over him,
Right.
because that's really dangerous.
Well, and also your ex-wife was a bit of a nightmare.
She was.
You know, I mean, your picker is off. You know, so
My picker is off, not pecker, but picker. Yeah, I don't pick as well as I might.
It's 30 years.
Yeah. Well, and then it brings up the whole thing about, this champion and the righteousness and, I'm going to save this woman and save her daughter. And I know it's this guy's daughter, but, this is what.
ego. I mean that's the most, and that when Brad was saying that moment I had with Michael Mann, it's like I was a comparative religion major in college, so I do think in terms of archetype, it actually really helps me. It's like, what are sort of like the if this was a myth, right? And so I think if this was a myth, it's really about this level, the end of a certain kind of dominating masculinity, right? I mean, literally, Dan Chase's body cannot do what it used to do,
Yeah.
although you do quite well,
No.
I have to say. And then what does it look like for him? Because if sort of the John Wayne hero, like I'm going to save the thing and I'm going to do the thing, and it's like, well, there's your daughter going like, you're not the best person, or even Zoe's like, let me talk to this guy. Like you got some tools, they're awesome toolbox, but they're not going to do everything.
Yeah.
So can this guy put his ego aside and be helped and supported?
Right.
And,
From the pilot on, when finally there is violence that breaks out, and especially this man who's had this period away, the physical fights, for lack of a bit, the fights that happen in this show, that was the thing that struck me in that pilot. It's protracted, and it's sloppy, and it's painful, and it tends to be very contiguous on screen. Mm-hmm. And so it has a sort of just shocking honesty, and again, doesn't leap into Marvel land. Was that an easy, because the pilot set the tone, was that a difficult journey to get right? Because often, depends on the stunt coordinators you have, but often, okay, here's what I have in mind for you, and they will show you, you're getting tossed into this table, and they can tend to go to, and to have it be like, again, the honesty that you had with
Yeah, well, making movies, it's all illusion, right? So you're working on how do we make it look real and interesting, both at the same time. And we got Tim Connolly, who's our stunt coordinator. And it was just such a joy working with him. It's like, in a way, it's like working a dance routine out. You do it very, by the numbers and so forth. And then it's, slowly adding, that. And he's very sensitive about the storytelling, the storytelling aspect. And like you said, kind of traditionally, the way to shoot a fight is very cutting. You just cut, you do this, and then you cut into that, and then. And what's, I think, more effective is the longer you can not cut, the better. Just speaking generally, has anybody seen Monsters Episode 5?
no, I want to see that though.
But you hear it? Did I tell you about what it is?
No.
It's a 33-minute shot, one take,
Wow.
one scene, a slow push.
When they
33
kill the
minutes.
girl. Yeah.
No, it's the lawyer talking to the kid, and he's telling what happened. And it's just such a bold move, man. Yeah. The cutting, that's like, it's like a blink, you're not even aware of it, but you kind of are subconsciously.
Yeah.
But, so Tim, if we work out as much of that as we possibly can, then of course it's an illusion. So it's not all me, it's also Tommy DuPont, who worked with a lot, you know. When I see that first season fights, I wince because during all that fight, I had a 9 by 12 inch tumor in my stomach that they were hitting me in the stomach, but it didn't hurt, you know. But now I look at it, I go, oh,
Amazing.
So crazy.
What you hear in Jeff's observations too, I wanted to point up and to ask you about, which is he's the master of the wide lux panoramic camera, an incredible photographer. Two editions available for the holidays. Pictures and Pictures 2, is that what it's called? Incredible books of
And
photography.
Sue got him into that.
Oh,
Sue's a
amazing. And
photographer.
the wide lux is an actual, it is a camera, it has a panel, and the playfulness and the observation of it. You have such a, I will, when they do press, I get bored, so I run around with my camera and I do stuff, and Jeff will, without fail, look and say, tell us a story.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
And how does that inform, when you're on your side of the lens, does that inform how you, your awareness? Because you have such a good awareness of the lens and in story.
I don't know if it informs the acting work. It's frustrating, you know, because you're there to act. You're not there to take pictures. And then if you're taking pictures, you see the great pictures all over the place. And so that, you know, that can be kind of maddening. That camera, which is it's a panning still camera. So if I was taking a picture of you guys, it'd go about this fast. So you have that much time to play and manipulate the image. And that camera is, you know, defunct now. The factory burned down many years ago, and my wife Sue and I are rebuilding that camera. So it's going to be available in maybe a year or two.
Fantastic.
So, yeah,
But I think we were actually talking about that on the ride over, that you're, because of what's going on in the world, how we're all doing, and you said some of the way you think is very, from a director's point of view, just in terms of not sinking into the present moment, but sort of going like, okay, like the four moves from here, you know.
Right.
And you know, we have, I have a bad sense of time and this and that, but I do think that, to your question, the actor thing is really to be present. It really is. And if we're not present, there's nothing to watch. And so if we can't, I'm not surprised that you don't hold both. It's like when I'm taking pictures, it's this part of my brain. But if I'm acting, it's really embodied and moment to moment. And the rest of the world falls away. It's just such a different part of our brains.
true.
She's very patient with me because it's like the short cues, like we'll be out in the middle of stuff and I'll just literally say, just your eyes. And she'll freeze and she'll just find me from my camera. She knows where the light is. It's good. I think before we open it up, one last question. This has been awesome. Actors whose work, as they've aged, that you've admired or respected. If family members are allowed and included. No wrong answers and no answer needed.
Yeah, you know who popped in my mind? Of course, when you say the family, Bo and my dad popped in. It was wonderful to work with them. You know, my dad, unlike a lot of guys in showbiz, really encouraged all his kids to go into showbiz. He loved it so much. And my mom was the same way, you know, and she would encourage us to do plays and all this kind of thing. And so working with my dad and as an adult, especially, we did one with Francis Coppola, and Coppola it was such a wild experience, you know. I don't know if I told you what he did, but it's kind of an interesting story. We had 2 weeks rehearsal. The first week was just getting to know each other. And then he said, now the second week, and he called up the cast and crew together. He says, now this next week, we're going to shoot the whole movie, and Vittorio Storaro will be on this little video camera, and this wheelchair will be his dolly. And I want you actors to get off book if you can. And you wardrobe people, look at these drapes. These would make wonderful wedding dress. And it was kind of like our gang comedy. Let's make a movie, come on. And it was so loose. And we shot the whole movie, again, just one take for each scene, but it was in literally in a linear fashion. And what we didn't know was that he was to and from work. He had a little editing console, and he was editing it. And at the end of that week, he gave us, he says, here's our movie, and now we're just going to polish it up. And it was so great to be able to refer to that while we were shooting, because you always shoot out of sequence, and to play like that with my dad was such a gas, you know. And then I'm thinking of Bo, but you know, Baker Boys, that was like a dream come true, you know. Oh God, and just to go in with a fighting theme, this is a great example of a first-time director. Steve Clovis directed, I mean, maybe 30 or something, I don't know.
Incredible writer.
Great writer, yeah.
Yeah.
And Bo, you know, Bo and I, our dad taught us how to fake fight. You know? So we have a fight scene in the thing. And I said, Steve, can Bo and I gaff this fight? It could be, he goes, sure, sure. So we do this big fight scene. And we had one very important mistake that we should never made, which was we had no out word, no safe word. So, you know, he's a piano player, and I'm not going to touch you because I'm not feeling well. Right. But he's got, I take his hand, I'm going to break it. I say, hey, and he goes, stop, you're hurting me. I say, act your ass off, you know. And I was just about broke his fingers.
Oh,
you know?
my God.
But when you say other actors, Tommy Lee Jones comes to mind, who, and he was always this kind of, even when he was younger, very opaque, you know. I don't like to see the wheels turning. So you know what I mean? I mean, it's like I don't know. It's really one of my saddest or not disappointing moments was working with him, and we all agreed that the last scene, which was a big kind of monologue for me, you know, summing up the whole thing, it wasn't right. You know, it wasn't written right. And we'll say, we'll fix it, we'll get it, you know, and I kept going. And now here's the day, and I've got this long thing. And he said, say this and then this and say, I can't remember, I can't do that, man. I said, put it on a card, put it behind his head. I'm gonna read the lines that I've got to give to one of my favorite actors on the card. But first, let me get a wide luck shot of you riding the card. That's one of my favorite photographs. Yeah. But you know, you get this biz, you get terrible disappointments, huh? Yeah. I think that's why a lot of parents don't want their kids to get into it, you know, because it can be heartbreaking. Yeah, yeah.
Tell the story about your mom and the ballet, though. This is
My mom, she was the best actor of the whole bunch. And she used to have this thing that she would call time with her kids. But she would do anything for an hour with her kids every day, not accept calls. Or I'm having my time with Jeff, you know. And then as we got older, I would call her up and say, Mom, I need some time, you know. How about some dinner? So she'd say, okay. So we'd go to this place in Westwood called the Palomino. I don't know if you know that in Westwood. And now, you know, she's like about 90 years old. And we had a wonderful dinner, and now we're walking to get the car, and there's a guy there, the what do you call him?
Valet.
The valet. He's there, and just as about 10 feet from him, my mom says, "Be mean to me," and I know her sense of humor for me, so I say, "Get in the car, bitch. Do it now." And she goes, "Oh, why are you so?" I said, "Don't back talk. Just get in the car." And this was to perform for this.
She's acting.
She just, and I can feel her sailing into the room. She would just love that.
Tell her that's one of my favorite stories. Listen, if I haven't been acting for a while, I need to act a little bit. It's just nice to ask for it. Like, I need, be mean to me, you know?
She'd be in the hospital about 80 years old, and a gurney being rolled down one of the halls, and she'd scream at the top of her lungs, "I want to keep the baby! I want to," she just always just thinking that little thing.
She's my
She
hero.
was a character. Oh man.
We have a 19-year-old son, and we have a daughter who's here, who's 23. Charlotte, who's here, is more. She rolls with a little better. My son is the opposite of a performer, and so anytime you go into any sort of one, he's always like, "Oh my God,
Mortified.
please,
I was like, "Is it embarrassing being my son?" He's like, "Yes."
yes, no question, no question." I want to open it up because I don't want to keep everyone from getting to see this incredible episode. How beautiful is this theater, though? Isn't this a great
Gorgeous.
And it's wonderful in projection, too, I gotta say. Was not here when I was in school. Then again, I was an English major, too. So. English majors.
A two-part question. What was the most challenging scene for each of you to play? And secondly, is there anything you learned about yourself from playing each of your respective characters?
Well, it's funny. I remember when you were talking about the Tommy Lee Jones moment of working out the scene.
yeah.
There's a scene at the end of episode 5. Remember me and John in the kitchen? Anyway, it was not right. It just wasn't quite right, or didn't make sense for various reasons. And I remember thinking, like, well, I don't think it's quite right. And then the three of us, I think it was during the strike. Oh, no, it wasn't.
I was going to ask you guys that can
It wasn't
feather
the
into
strike.
the strike.
But John wasn't on set. It was Daphne. Remember that, the woman, right? Anyway, it was really beautiful to see people that I esteem so much, John and Jeff and myself, struggle. You know what I mean? And nobody acted poorly, but I remember John Lithgow was just like, we can't do this. We got to work it out. And it was so beautiful and so honest. And then we muddled through, we made it better. And then the next day I said to John, like, that was kind of a cool process. And he, he's such a pro and such a sunny person. He was like, yeah, I was really frustrated. And I was like, I know, I think we all were, but there was no ego attachment or weirdness about it. Just you want to make the scene good, right?
And I can't remember the director we had, but
Ben? Was it that guy,
but very
Ben?
encouraging.
Yeah.
We're all part of we're figuring this out.
Right,
It's like,
right.
that guy Ben,
No, we liked Ben.
his credit.
Yeah, and I think for me it's like the Zoe is Amy is Zoe. So when I feel like frustrated or in love, like it's still that journey of like, is this Amy or Zoe? It doesn't matter. It's like I am a human instrument and I'm vibing in a certain way, and that's what the camera is going to capture. And I think just sort of trusting the process more and more. And honestly, every time I get to, I'll be in my head about a scene or whatever, and then I get with you on set and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna hang on. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, I'm thinking of this scene where I hesitate to talk about it because it's kind of a pivotal thing for people who haven't seen the thing. So I'll see if I can be a little oblique about it. It was a scene where I had to get very emotional. Something terrible happened in my life. And it was an uncomfortable set. And Amy was so terrific. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about that, but I was really appreciative of your being there, just your presence.
In the hotel?
No, in the basement.
Oh.
You remember
heat.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was challenging. I remember another movie where a similar feeling was, where I had a long kind of emotional monologue, and Robin was doing it with Robin Williams. And I was so concerned that he was going to bust my chops. He was supposed to be in a coma, and I think he'd be going, doing something like that. But he did, his comedy was just something in his kit bag. He was a wonderful actor, and he didn't say a word, but I felt the support coming from him that was so remarkable. And I felt the same thing from you in that scene. To count on you're not doing it alone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in a show, again, that's so, the language and the writing, talk about the writer's strike. I mean,
Yeah.
so you shot through 5? Is that when finally you stopped?
4, I
Four.
think.
Maybe
Just-
5 didn't happen. That's right.
I mean, I don't know, here's for you listening at home. I mean, so we start in March of 2020, and then January of 2020, and then March of 2020, we were supposed to go to Morocco, Marrakesh. Yay! So COVID, then we reconvened 6 months later with COVID precautions, and Jeff has a back, we're like, what's going on? Oh, he has a back pain. Jeff got cancer. And so then January of 21, like, hey, beat cancer, got COVID. Then we finished up season 1. And then it was like, let's just keep going. And then there was the writer's strike, which was really, this is going to sound, this was a moment for me where so I'm not in the first 3 episodes of season 2, and then I come online, and again, the scenes weren't quite there, but John is such a wonderful, they get there, right? I always trust, well, we'll get there. But they can't get there if the writer's not on the set. So I was like, dang. And I remember going, it was really challenging. And then, anyway, they had Zoe, who's now a producer, so she's not in the Writers Guild, so she could be on set. And anyway, I was getting notes like, can Amy smile more? And I'm like, oh, this feels like 25 years ago. And it's like, if John Steinberg had been on set, I was like, what do you mean? So, and he probably could have said, like, oh, could you feather this in?
Yeah.
But like, as a female, I was getting these things that were so archetypal, like, you, like, I'm never gonna smile again, actually. So we had, I think, 3 scripts. They're like, we're gonna keep going without the writers on set. And that lasted all of 1 episode, I think, including you getting hounded. I wasn't even there the last day. There, we were still shooting, and we weren't breaking any Writers Guild rules, but it wasn't great, to have to cross lines, and it was all getting kind of tricky. And didn't you? You were shooting. You were put in like John, the AD's car, because they didn't want the Disney van. Anyway, we were like hiding, and then. It's like Jeff, so I get the call, like, we're going to shut down from Dan. And I was like, what? He's like, it's just ridiculous. Like, Jeff was basically doing his own lighting with a big whiteboard. Let's just.
It's kind of fun.
I know. I was like, I'm sure he's loving it.
It's that our gang comedy kind of thing.
Thank you very much for today, Jeff. I'm a big fan. My wife and I are big fans. Just a quick question. In your career, and I'm, I guess, referring to Tron in technology and then the Marvel universe. How do you bring that, I guess, those gifts with the performers in, I guess, contrasting the tech or the, working with the VR or whatever the special effects are versus a real person? Because in The Old Man, I feel your vulnerability, and I think that's some of the beauty behind kind of the evolution of masculinity. Like I could feel your strength and your experience, but then you're grasping for help, but you're not asking for it. You're showing it by action.
And so your question is?
What's the difference between working with technology versus and those gifts that you give?
Well, I was saying before, it's all illusion, whether you're got other people to work with or you just do it a blue screen. So that is kind of a constant, to create that and to do this little tweak in your mind that this is really happening, And when you have just a blue thing with nothing there, it is kind of challenging, and you try to do what we were saying before, really cover your butt with all different levels of reaction to give the editor and director something to work with. And, it's frustrating that way. Yeah, the technology, man. I mean, it's gonna, it's gonna get really wild here. Well, they'll be it'll be the writers basically, right? They'll just say, give me 45% De Niro, 10% Tommy Lee, and maybe a couple of percent Bridges, put him in there. So let's see what it looks like. Okay, now have him say these lines. And, it's going to be the end of the acting, I think. Theater will become the state of the art.
I'm telling you, come over to my side.
That'll be the thing. But, the technology, what they can do now.
But what's interesting is I remember when George Lucas started doing the new round of Star Wars films, he invited a bunch of filmmakers to come up to the ranch for a couple days. I think he just wanted a little shot in the arm from people. And he showed a reel, I think it was from the first of those films. Sam Jackson was in it, and he showed a reel of Sam Jackson walking down a green hallway. And he said, what was great about this was I hadn't even decided what was around him.
Oh, yeah.
And I told Sam, I don't even know what's going to be around it. It might be a coliseum. It might be this. And what you saw, I felt for Sam. You saw him, I just need to get from this mark to that mark and not engage because I don't know what I'm engaging with. And it was what an incredible actor. And nothing stuck to you watching it because he wasn't given enough of a set of story tools to work with. It was really
There's something, you probably know the guy's name, I can't think of the famous Russian director, but there's a test or whatever you want to call it. Not a test, an example. I can't think of the
I think
word.
it's Eisenstein.
Said the director said, okay, to the actor, look here, and don't think anything. Look here, don't think anything. Look here, here, and then he intercut, a plate of eggs, a baby, a grave, and the response from the audience was the subtlety of the actor. It's all about juxtaposition. How you put that stuff in. So a lot of times, you don't have to do, and the audience is supplying so much, and you can just don't have to do anything, let the audience work with it, build it.
We did a class together collaboration, and I had just done a film with Dustin Hoffman. We had Dustin come in, and he was talking about that very thing. He said, okay, so what's a reaction to finding out that my loved one has just died? And he just pointed to all the kids in the front row and said, just freeze right now where you are. That's appropriate. That's really appropriate.
Nice, yeah.
That would be amazing. All of those against this reveal that it's not what you think it is. You're not indicating what to expect.
That's such a powerful word, isn't it, for us actors?
Yeah.
Indicating, that's, it's so, it's work you don't have to do,
Yeah.
I want to start by saying that my friend and I were so addicted to the show when we were watching it on streaming that when we hit real time and we had to wait for it to stream, it was like, oh my God, it's on network! It's on network! We can watch it! It was like we had won the lottery. So just wanted to start by saying that. This is a Zoe question for Amy, and I'll try to not give spoiler alerts. When your character has left for a while and you come back, and all these things have happened that we, the audience, don't know about yet. How did you approach that as an actor, knowing you'd had these off-screen experiences that we weren't privy to?
Like at the top of the season?
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, especially given how long it has taken to shoot this, I kept saying from the end of season 1 to when I appear in season 2 to John Steinberg, I was like, what is this length of time? And he's like about 2 to 3 weeks. So I got pretty specific, and I kept reminding Jeff. He's like, why are you mad at me? I was like, you ditched me in Morocco. He's like, I what? I was like, yes. He's like, oh, I kept forgetting. So I got really specific with that amount of time, and I think for maybe half of that time, I thought, well, I think I'm out of the TV show. I'm going to live my life with my millions, and then I sort of tracked for myself what would pull me back in, and it was basically Joel Grey. I mean, it was a little bit of my own instinct, but that, I did have to do some work around that because with what we know in season 1, you know, Zoe wanted agency, she wanted money, she wanted to be taken seriously, and she really got all those things. So I would say to my friend Jeff Bridges, like, I don't really know why Zoe's here, and he would say, we love each other.
That's right.
Which I also think is the secret sauce. But yeah, I mean, I sort of had to get sort of granular. The other trick mostly in season 1 too is because Zoe was it was this deep dark story, and I kept having to be ask John, it's like, what do I know, you know? And then basically by the end of season 1, I know everything that the audience knows, or you know, except for Lou Barlow. I don't know about Lou Barlow.
That's right.
Wouldn't it be great? We're waiting.
Yeah,
No,
we
but
don't know.
That's not being coy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's imminent. But
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll see.
Very
Big
big
cliffhanger.
cliffhanger. Very big cliffhanger.
I'm an optimist. I think there will be
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's likely there will be.
Jeff Bridges and Amy Brenneman.
Thank you, guys.